Welcome to Christian Statesman. I'm your host, Zach Wagner, and this is episode 61. What happens if the earth protests? We read, mostly in the foreign press, about unprecedented volcanic and earthquake activity within the last week. Mount Etna in Italy has erupted. 3 volcanoes in Mexico went off simultaneously. A volcanic plume has surfaced and is drifting over Lake Michigan. Meanwhile, a large 8.1 earthquake occurred off the shores of New Zealand in the Pacific, with a whole series of 7.0 or better rippling along the Ring of Fire. Yet, for the most part, our media is quiet. While we can accept these occurrences as coincidental, there may be a deeper question each of us should consider. What would it look like if the earth itself were to protest the untoward activities of mankind upon it? There are several interesting assumptions we must visit if we are even to consider such a premise. The geologist, one schooled strictly in science, would say that the earth is an inert sphere of rock and various elements swirling in the vast emptiness of space. It is only by a random alignment of factors that somehow allowed all of these elements to coalesce into a life-sustaining biosphere. The spiritualist, as we see in many Native American cultures, would claim that the earth is a divine creation, an entity that has an actual spirit, and that our planet is a vast, complex, living thing with a mind and will of its own. Does that sound far-fetched? Does it smack of the superstitious hocus-pocus of the unenlightened heathen? Yet, what if such a supposed ignorant take is much closer to reality? What would it look like if the earth could think and react for itself? One controversial author, and one of white European descent, wrote in a biographical book about a personal near-death experience during which it was shown that the earth indeed has a spirit and will and can respond to the inputs humankind perpetrates upon her surface. This sort of testimony grabs one's attention. Further reading and research demonstrates that this account is not an isolated incident, and there is a large body of metaphysical experience that would back up the premise. And this is mostly not from Native American folklore, although the holy men of numerous tribes would support the idea. The premise looks mostly like this. This earth is God's creation, organized by the mind and will of God and assigned the task of housing the sons and daughters of God while they have a mortal experience. The earth relies on a divine connection to light to fulfill her mission in sustaining God's children. When evil multiplies across the face of the earth, it shrouds the earth in a spiritual sense from the life-sustaining life of her Creator. When this occurs to a great degree, the earth becomes unsettled and shakes off enough darkness to reestablish her connection to light. This shaking is manifest in events we would classify as natural disasters. It is a fine narrative, if one subscribes to creationist doctrine. But again, is it closer to reality than fantasy? I wonder how past inhabitants viewed this as evidence of sudden termination of large groups of well-organized civilizations continue to surface in our geological records. One is forced to ponder the awakening of geological activities across the globe and ask, is the earth about to enter a new series of protests? It is a valid question. One can frame events we normally call natural disasters in one of two ways. The first is that it is indeed a simple random geological event, an event among so many other events that occur from time to time in history. The other take purports that such events indeed have a spiritual element to them, and there exists an element of judgment in them. But good people are harmed or die in such events, the critic would claim. What about them? The scriptures are clear. The Lord causes his rain to fall on the righteous and the wicked, and the innocent may indeed not be spared the judgments that could fall upon us all. From a Christian perspective, we are taken home to that God who gave us life. There really actually is no death, just a change of scenery. How pleasant that scenery remains depends on the virtue of the individual. From this perspective, the protests of the earth can be seen as just that, a backlash to the evils perpetrated upon her surface. Whether or not such a perspective is entirely credible may not be the most important thing at the moment. The critical question is, should such phenomena start to multiply, are you prepared? Could you survive the eruption of the entire West Coast volcanic system? Could you endure through an 8.0 or higher earthquake in your region? And yes, California, that means you. Regardless of the perceived causality, the Earth has been known to protest from time to time. Geologic activity, whether it be spiritually linked or not, is currently on the move. And our best response to that is the traditional emergency preparation recommended by experts for years. The time may almost be past to think about or act upon such things. Thank you for joining us today. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and as always, have a blessed day.